take a look back. So as a child, I actually found running to be the most wicked activity. And I use that word not in the way my New England relatives do when they're talking about the Bruins or the Sox, but instead from its Old English origins to mean something most evil. Dealing with asthma at a young age only seemed to solidify my disapproval of running. And I can say with absolute certainty, I don't think anything more than a mile ever came out of me during my first 20 years. And he had run races when I was younger, races called 5Ks and 10Ks, which at the time I thought the K stood for crazy, not distance. But at 21, I heard he was training for a half marathon, and I really wanted to get a feel for what he was in for. I set out for 2 miles, something I naively thought would be a cinch. After needing 5 days to recover, all I could ask him was, "What in the world are you thinking?" It's funny to think that my opinion of running ever existed in this way, as it is now a central part of my life. What ultimately changed my views on running lies largely in the reason we're all here tonight. When I was 16, I began to experience focal seizures, but at the time I had no understanding of what they were. Things like deja vu and difficulties in recalling words became a common occurrence for me and began to disrupt much of my life. I had no explanation or cure. And for 6 years, I tried to find an answer to no avail. So when I turned 22, wanting nothing more than to be healthy, I realized it was time to make a change. One of the biggest changes made came in my heedless but driven decision to start running. When my father handed me down a pair of shoes, I ran without a clock, without anyone beside me. And in this solitude, I found not pain, but peace. In this time of running and feeling the healthiest I had felt in years, the answer I had long been looking for then came in the form of an unforeseen massive seizure. A diagnosis of cancer is something no good parent ever wishes their child to hear, but I would be lying if I said that the diagnosis of brain cancer that followed my seizure was not without its upsides. Out of everything it has taught me, it provided me with an answer to a question I had held for much of my life, and for that I can only be thankful. When I found out I was to have surgery and later chemotherapy and radiation, I spent a month in preparation, often running alone, doing all I could to prepare my mind and body. And when it came to my day of surgery, I thought back to the things that running had taught me. While many of us wish to control every aspect of our lives, there is only so much our own hands can hold. I told myself I had done all that I could, and that it was time to surrender myself to the hands of another. In a bed at Memorial Sloan Kettering, I waited for the nurses to take me into this next chapter in my life. What came after was not without its difficulties. One of the most helpful things for me involved returning to the trails I had once run on, this time not alone, but with my father. I was still too fragile to make any attempt at running, but to be able to walk through my old haunts that symbolized peace, health, and hope meant everything to me. It would take some time until I could run again, but the want to do so never faded. As I slowly recovered from treatment, the wish to give back to those who had given so much to me took over. A large part of this manifested in my choice to pursue a career in nursing, inspired by the compassion and connection I had felt from so much of MSK's nursing staff. Running always seemed to be an activity that only benefited myself. But when I heard that my running could help raise awareness and fund research through a hospital so important to me, I felt the immediate need to join Fred's team. While we should never question the impact a single person can have in this world, being able to be part of a team like this one ensures that the message we all wish to spread can be heard by all. A world without cancer can not only be imagined, but can become a reality. For that reason and so many more, I will run with Fred's team for as long as I can.
I knew I should have went first. All right, first off, let me thank all of you for the opportunity to speak to this group. I'm sure everybody in this room has an inspirational story and has dedicated a big part of their lives towards fighting this fight. So thank you for the honor and all that you've done. I'm the kind of person who has to learn lessons more than once for them to sink in. 15 years ago, I was diagnosed at the age of 38 with a rare form of leukemia. The one thing I remember quite clearly after the dizzying array of emotions was how incredibly sharp and well illuminated my sense of what was and who was really important to me. But at the time, Sam was 10, his sister Abby, who's here tonight, was 8, and I remember my greatest fear being that I would leave them and my wife Lisa unprovided for. I can clearly remember praying every night for God to let me just live 10 more years so I could take care of them, and they would then be young adults and would be able to find their way in life. But like I said, I can be a slow learner, and I slowly spiraled back into the rat race of being the provider, and some of those insights began to fade. 2.5 years ago, I was in a hotel here in New York City when Lisa called me and said something was very, very wrong, and I needed to get home as soon as possible. Sam had had a massive seizure, and you've now heard his story. That sharpness and clarity of thought about what and who I really cared about, who I really was as a person, came back in high definition. Sitting in the waiting area at MSK for the longest 5 hours of my life when Sam was in surgery, I promised myself two things. I would do everything I could to repay, assist, shill for, shamelessly promote what the incredible people at MSK do every single day. I can remember thinking, what if the cure for someone else's child is in someone's head or just sitting in a manila file somewhere representing an unfunded trial or program? Second, I would not forget this time. I would live my life differently, and I'd incorporate something into my life to remind me of the powerful lessons I've learned. Somewhat accidentally, marathon running became both a form of therapy for me as well as that element in my life. And Brett's team would be a way to accomplish both of these promises at the same time. While training for my first marathon in 2015, I realized how many parallels there are between distance running and the fight against cancer. They are certainly two of the more impactful circumstances to confront on anyone's journey to self-discovery. So I thought I'd share a few of these things that I thought about a lot during Sam's journey and an awful lot during my training runs. And when you plod along like I do, you have plenty of time to think on your training runs, and you're actually looking for things to think about most of the time. So a few things. First off, we all know that life is short. Much of us now know that marathon training makes it seem much, much longer. Whoever knew they had a body part called an IT band? I thought it was a group of coders who played music or something. I had no idea what people were talking about. Who knew we would become so proficient at toenail surgery? And who knew that you'd be so excited to discover a random porta-john on your running route? It's thrilling. But more seriously, there is no shortcutting a marathon training or in the fight against cancer. Ultimate success is a result of many small efforts, repeated day in and day out, week in and week out. And perseverance is really the secret behind all great triumphs. That in life and in distance running, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. I began to view every training run, especially those with Sam, as a gift, not a chore. But maybe the most important realization of this whole experience is wrapped up in a quote that I once saw. That is, you never know how strong you are until strong is the only choice you have. Thank you.